to my channel. My name is Angela and this is my Precious Yarnery. Today we're going to do a tutorial on this sweater. Now what you need is you need your yarn. I'll go through the yarn I used in a second. I used an eye hook, so a 6. You need scissors. I need a threader, whether you do or not, because I cannot thread a needle. And then you need your needle. So what I used is this beautiful yarn from Mary Maxim's. It's a roving yarn, but you can use whatever you want, and it's customized to fit you or whoever you're making it for. I show you in the next little bit how I measure for my sweaters. It's simple. So I'm going to tell you what I did for this one. This one's a large. So this yarn, let me tell you about this yarn. It's a light 3-weight yarn. It says a 4mm needle. I used a 6 hook. You can figure that out. And if you want to use a bigger hook, go right ahead. You want to use smaller, you can too. And this has 290 yards. That's made in Turkey. I love this yarn. It was so easy to work with. Even when because it's roving and it looks like it's going to be hard to frog, it's not. Okay, so I measure from my shoulder from here to here, the length it should be, and I did 70 stitches to 74 stitches to start, and then the back panel, because you do it in 3 panels, the back panel I did 70 rows. That was for me. The front panels, there's 2 front panels. You do them exactly the same. It's 74 stitches, and then I do 30 rows on each side. And then it's just single crochets and then the crab stitch. Simple for the trim. Now I did not put a trim on the sleeve. What I did on the sleeve was 55 rows. So yes, I used about 1,450 yards approximately. Everybody's going to be different depending on the size, how tight your stitches are, you know, all that good stuff. Okay guys, I hope you have fun with this, and remember, just wing it. That's what I did. Okay, so have a good day. Bye-bye. Okay, so to start this stitch, remember you need to make the chain as long as you want your garment. Now I did 74 chains. You need an even number of chains. I'm going to just do a small swatch for you right now, so I'm only going to do 10 chains. And it's really simple. So you do your slip knot, and you do any even number as long as you want your sweater. So 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Like I said, I did 74 on my sweater, and that's about an extra large and I'm 5'6", and you just make it as wide as you need it. So for the back piece, I will explain everything that later. So with the Trinity stitch, you just need any even number. I did 74. This one is just a sample. I'm just doing 10. So I turn it, and I always work in my back loops. Now I skip the first loop, and I do a single crochet in the second one. Second loop from the hook, 1 single crochet. So the Trinity stitch is very simple. It is 3 single crochets together. So I go into the same stitch I just worked in, bring up my yarn, go into the next hump, wrap my yarn, bring it through, and then 1 more. Wrap my yarn and bring it through. So now I have 4 stitches on my hook. So I'm going to wrap my yarn and go through all 4 stitches. And then I'm going to do 1 single crochet. And make that one fairly loosely because you're going to be working into that, the next row. So do it again. Go into the stitch I've already worked in, bring in 1 loop, go in my next hump, bring in my next loop and then my next hump, wrap my yarn and bring it through. Now I have always 4 stitches, and then I bring them through, wrap my yarn, bring through all 4, and then I do 1 chain. Now remember I said make that loose. So again, I go through the stitch I worked in, and then my next 2 humps. And then you have 4, wrap your yarn, bring through all 4, and then 1 chain. So at the end of the row, you should have 2 left, and that's perfect. So you have 1 there, a stitch, you got your loop there, go through the stitch you worked in, the next one, and then your last 2. Then you have 4, wrap your yarn, wrap your yarn, bring it through. Now at the end of the row, you do not do a chain. You go into your last stitch that you worked in and bring up and do a 1 single crochet. And then you chain 1 and turn your work. And then in that space you do 1 single crochet. Okay, so your repeat for the rest of the row. You got your 1 single crochet, you go through that, bring up a loop. Then you go in your next stitch and bring up a loop. And then there is where you'd put your chain. So if you made it loose enough, it shouldn't be too hard to get into. And then you have 4, wrap your yarn, bring through all 4 and your chain. And then you go through that stitch again, your next, and then the top of that one. And you have 4, wrap your yarn, bring it through. And then you do your chain. And you just keep repeating that. Now if your chain's too tight, sometimes it takes a minute to get it through. Okay, and then you're on your last one. So you wrap you go through the stitch you worked in, bring in your hoop. And your next stitch, bring in your yarn, and then your last stitch, bring in up your yarn, wrap your yarn, bring it through. Do not, at your last stitch, do not do the chain on top. Do a single crochet in your last stitch. Chain 1 and turn your work. I'll show you one more time. You go through, you do a single crochet in the first stitch. And then you do your stitch. Go on top of that last one. It's a little tight. And then you have 4. You bring it all the way through. And then you do your chain. And then you do it again. You just keep doing the same thing all the way through except for the beginning and the end. Okay, so you're on your last one. You do your 3 single crochets together. And then do not do the chain. Go into the last stitch you worked in and do a single crochet, chain 1, turn your work, and then you do another single crochet, and then you start all over. And this is what it will look like. It looks like somewhat of the star stitch, but not. And that's what you'll end up with. Okay, so once you got your 3 panels done, I will meet you back here. Hi everyone, just popping in to make sure you measure correctly, because I don't think I've ever put in there how I measure it. So this is my back piece. I measure when I do my chain. So do my chain, I do it lengthways in this pattern, so it goes, so you will see that it'll go as long as I need it to go, and then I'll do a trim underneath that, so that's more than long enough. And then the back piece, this one is very stretchy, this yarn. I made it big, so I just put it across here to make sure it goes across both shoulders, touches the other side of my shoulders. That's how I do that, the back piece. Now the front piece, I count my rows, put stitch markers right in the middle, and then I go back a few, just so I have a good size neck piece, and then that's how many rows I do. So this one, it turned out I did 30 rows altogether, and I made it, I think it was 74 stitches. Okay guys, I'll see you back at the table to show you how I sew it up. Okay, so I get most of it in. So your panel is facing, the right side is facing up, and then you take your other side of your panel and have the right side facing down, and just get it in there. And then I need my stitch markers. So you put stitch markers all the way down here. Let me bring it up, all the way down here. But I always measure, and I always like about, for me and my family, like we all basically almost are all the same size. It's about 6.5 inches. Now you can make your arm smaller or bigger, whatever you want. It's just approximately 6.5 inches. Put a stitch marker in, and I always try to use a certain color for my arm, so I know not to sew up right here. So then I put stitch markers all the way across here and then all the way down, so I know where to sew. And then I do the same thing on the other side. Okay, I'll be back after I'm done the sewing. Okay, just to show you what I've done. So I only needed 3. I put one at the bottom, stitch marker, and one there. Very even, isn't it? And one there, and then I have 3 up there. And then I'll do the same to the other side, and then I'll take my needle, and this is how, well, I'll start probably here. I don't know how many times I have sewn up my yarn and had to take it out. So to start my sewing, hope you can see it. I always tie it in a knot, and I leave my tails really long so it's easier for me to sew in and make sure it's really good. And then I just go through 2 loops on one side and 1 loop on the other side. And I could do that all the way down. Then I tie it off, and then I go to another section that needs to be sewn. Sewing is not my favorite thing, but what are you gonna do? Okay guys, I will be back after it's all sewn, and we'll start the arms. Okay, I have it all sewn together. I have it not inside out anymore. I put it the right way. So I'm going to attach my yarn right in here. I always leave a long tail. Longer than probably most people, which is fine. If you don't want to leave a long tail, you don't have to. Okay, so what we're going to do, change my camera angle, hold on, I want to make sure it's right for you, is a single crochet all the way around, and make sure you count them so you can do the same on the other side, and you have to have an even number of single crochets. So There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6. Okay, I'll meet you all the way when you get to the other side. Okay, so I got 50 stitches all the way around. So then I'm just going to connect it to my first stitch. Slip stitch, chain 1, turn your work, and then single crochet, and we're just going to follow that same pattern we did for the sweater. So you're going to do single crochet, and then you're going to do 3 single crochets together, of yarn, pull them through, and then 1 single crochet. Got a lot going on. Get my yarn back. Okay, so again, in that stitch that you just worked in, and it's very dark. Okay, so the stitch you just work into, you go back in it, and 3 stitches together, single crochets together, and then 1 chain. And you just keep doing that, and I'll meet you at the other, and when you're about to put them together, when this row is done. Okay, so I have made it all the way around, so I'm going to connect it, so like a slip stitch, chain 1, and we're going to turn. Let's see if I can get this. I got everything everywhere, guys. Okay. And in where, okay, so then where you chain, slip stitch, well, your first stitch, you got to put a single crochet, and then you're going to keep going with the pattern. 3 single crochets together, and a chain, and you're just going to keep going all the way around until, as long as you need your sleeve to be. And you just keep going all the way around, and then I will meet you when we're at the end of the sleeve, and I'm going to do the trim. Okay, so I have decided not to put a trim on the sleeves. It's just single crochet. It's just, it looks really cute, I think, and it's, let's see this one better. It is just the pattern, and it looks a little scalloped. It looks finished. It looks really good. I like it. So, but for the bottom, I'm going to put a trim and around the neck. So we're just going to attach our yarn to your first stitch. Make sure I don't get that tail. And you attach your yarn any way you want. This is the way I prefer doing it. Okay, so I'm going to single crochet, because this whole thing is single crochets basically, just 3 together. So I'm just going to do 5 rows of single crochets, and just put it where it can go. Okay, so single crochets, and I will meet you at the end of the row. Okay, so we're at the end. You do your last single crochet, chain one, and turn. And then you just, first stitch, you just do a single crochet and you just keep going, and you do 5 rows of single crochets all together. So you got 1 done, and then I have 4 more to go. Okay, and I'll meet you when you're done that. Okay, so I'm at the end. I have a couple stitches left to do. And then, now you guys don't have to, you can put any trim you want on this, but I'm also going to chain one, and I'm going to do the crab stitch. So let me just, okay, I just got the camera where it needs to be. Okay, so the crab stitch, you chain one and you're working backwards. The first couple are a little tedious, but once you get going, and it's just a single crochet backwards. So you chain one, go into your next space, your stitch, and it's just a single crochet, and you do that all the way back. So you go, so you go into this one next. You see that? Go into it, bring in another loop, your yarn over, pull through both, and then you just keep going all the way. It's a little tedious at first. It's easy to do once you get the hang of it. Okay, so you just, and I'll meet you at the other side. Now, if you don't know how to do the crab stitch, there is a lot of tutorials out there that will teach you it. That's probably way better than me. Let me show you one more time. So you're working backwards. It's a single crochet backwards. So you go into your stitch, pull through your yarn. So then you got 2 loops there. You wrap your yarn, pull through both, and then you just keep going. Same thing. Okay, I'll meet you at the end. Okay, so I'm at my end. Let's see if I only have a couple stitches left. I think I'd be prepared. Okay, so make sure you get your last stitch, and then you, to end it, you just chain one, cut it, pull your yarn through, and then you got to, of course, sew all your ends at the end. Now we're going to do around the collar. So you just pick a side, attach your end to the first stitch. Now I'm going to do the same thing I did around the bottom. So I'm going to attach my yarn, should flip it. So let's do that again. See, we're not perfect around here. By no means, and we make mistakes all the time, but you know, we're just winging it. Okay, now I gotta find my end. Oh my goodness. Okay, here we go. So attach my yarn, and I'm going to do 5 rows of single crochet again, Now these are piddly ones until you hit the side. Make sure you space them out good, nice and even. And then I'll just go into my holes here. So 5 rows, and then the crab stitch, and then I sew in all my ends, and then it's done. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you did, give it a like, subscribe, and hopefully I'll get better at them. Okay, everyone, have a good day. Bye.